Those children have care. Zeke's rifle didn't waver. They have guidance. And as of this morning, they have a father. Burke snorted. What are you talking about? I filed adoption papers 3 days ago. Judge Morrison approved them yesterday. Zeke reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded document. Thomas, Mercy, Samuel, and Lily Whitfield are now legally my children, my heirs, my blood in the eyes of the law. Clara's breath caught. 3 days ago, he'd started the process before he even told her. Burke's face had gone white. That's not possible. You can't just... I can, and I did. Zeke tossed the document at Burke's feet. Read it yourself. Signed, sealed, and witnessed. Those children belong to me now. You want to take them? You go through the courts. And I promise you, Burke, I got better lawyers than you got deputies. Mrs. Ashworth's thin face had pinched even tighter. And what about the girl? Clara, the one who assaulted an officer of the law. Clara Whitfield is a ward of Widow Harrison, legal and proper. She works for me as a domestic employee. Any attempt to remove her will be met with the full force of my legal team. Zeke lowered his rifle slightly. Face it, Burke. You lost. Now get off my land before I forget I'm a civilized man. Burke stood there, shaking with rage. His hand hovered over his pistol. Go ahead, Zeke said softly. Draw. Give me a reason. The moment stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Then Burke's hand dropped to his side. This ain't over, he hissed. You think some papers are going to protect you? You think the law's going to be on your side forever? I'm going to find a way to take those children. I'm going to find a way to make you pay for humiliating me. You're welcome to try. Zeke raised his rifle again. Now get off my property. You got 10 seconds. Burke mounted his horse, his movements jerky with fury. Mrs. Ashworth followed, her face pinched with disapproval. 10, Zeke counted. 9, 8. The riders wheeled their horses and galloped toward the gates. 7, 6, 5. They passed through the gates and disappeared down the road. 4, 3, 2. Silence fell over the ranch. 1. Zeke lowered his rifle. His shoulders sagged. Clara realized he'd been trembling the whole time. Zeke? She touched his arm. Are you okay? He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw tears in his eyes. Go get your siblings, he said hoarsely. Bring them home. Home. Clara ran. She found them huddled in the trees by the creek, just like she'd told them. Tommy was standing guard with a stick, ready to fight the whole world. Mercy was singing softly to Lily, trying to keep the toddler calm. And Sammy was crouched at the edge of the water, watching the minnows swim. Clara! Mercy spotted her first and launched herself into her sister's arms. Clara, what happened? Are the bad men gone? They're gone, sweetheart. They're gone. Clara gathered all of them close, breathing in the scent of her family. And they're not coming back. How do you know? Tommy's voice was suspicious, guarded. Clara smiled through her tears. Because we have a father now, she said. A real one. One who'll protect us no matter what. Tommy stared at her. McAllister? Zeke. Clara took her brother's hand. His name is Zeke, and he's family now, just like us. They walked back to the ranch together. 5 children who'd been homeless and hunted, who'd been abandoned and afraid. But they weren't homeless anymore. They weren't hunted. They were home. And standing on the porch, waiting for them with tears on his weathered cheeks, was the man who'd given them that home. Their father. 3 weeks passed, and for the first time in her life, Clara Whitfield knew what peace felt like. She woke each morning to the smell of wood smoke and the sound of cattle lowing in the distance. She cooked meals that made grown men smile. She watched her siblings blossom under Zeke's gruff but tender care, watched the shadows fade from their eyes, watched them become children again instead of survivors. Tommy had grown 2 inches, it seemed, fed on good food and purpose. He spent his days learning the ranch alongside Jonas, coming home each evening exhausted and proud, talking about horses and cattle and the ways of the land. Mercy sang constantly now, her voice ringing through the house like bells. She'd started teaching Lily the words to her made-up songs, and the 2 of them could often be found in the meadow behind the east barn, dancing in circles and singing to the sky. Sammy talked more each day. Not a lot, not like before, but enough. He followed Zeke like a shadow, and Zeke let him. Clara would catch them sometimes, the big man and the small boy, sitting side by side on the porch rail, not speaking, just being together. And Lily. Sweet, sunny Lily had claimed Zeke as her own. She called him Z and demanded to sit on his lap at every meal. And Zeke, who had once declared he didn't want to see or hear the children, now carved wooden animals for her at night and tucked her into bed with stories about a little girl named Emma who lived among the stars. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was close. So close that Clara sometimes forgot to be afraid. That was her first mistake. The trouble started on a Tuesday, 3 weeks and 2 days after Burke's retreat. Clara was kneading bread dough when Jonas burst through the kitchen door, his face pale beneath his weathered tan. "Where's the boss?" Clara's hands stilled. "In his study. Why? What's wrong?" Jonas was already moving. "Rustlers hit the north pasture last night. Took about 30 head. 30 head? Clara wiped her hands on her apron and followed him. That's a lot of money and a lot of trouble. Jonas knocked on Zeke's study door without waiting for permission. "Boss, we got a problem." The next hour was chaos. Zeke assembled a posse of his best men, armed them, and prepared to ride out after the rustlers. Clara watched from the porch, her heart tight with worry. "Be careful," she said, as Zeke mounted his horse. He looked down at her, his gray eyes soft. "Always am." "That ain't true, and we both know it." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Keep the children close. Lock the doors at night. Jonas is staying behind with 4 men. Anyone comes to the gate that ain't me or mine, you don't let them in. Understood?" "Understood." Zeke hesitated, like he wanted to say something more. Then he simply nodded and spurred his horse forward, leading his men down the road and out of sight. Clara stood on the porch until the dust settled, a cold feeling creeping into her bones. Something was wrong. She could feel it. She just didn't know what. The answer came 3 days later, in the middle of the night. Clara woke to screaming. She was on her feet before her eyes were fully open, her body moving on pure instinct. The screaming was coming from outside, high and terrified, and beneath it she could hear another sound. Crackling. Roaring. Fire. Clara ran to the window and felt her heart stop. The main barn was ablaze. Flames licked at the wooden walls, climbing higher and higher, painting the night sky orange and red. Men ran back and forth with buckets, shouting, but the fire was spreading too fast. "Clara?" Tommy appeared in the doorway, his face white with fear. "Clara, what's happening?" "Get your sisters and brother. Get them to the root cellar. Don't come out until I come for you." "But now, Tommy!" Clara grabbed her shawl and ran outside. The heat hit her like a wall, stealing her breath. She could see Jonas organizing the bucket brigade, could hear him shouting orders over the roar of the flames. "Clara!" Jonas spotted her and waved her back. "Get inside! This ain't safe!" "Where did it start?" "Don't know. Went up like someone poured kerosene on it." Jonas's face was grim. "We're losing the battle here. If the wind shifts, the whole ranch could go." Clara's blood ran cold. The whole ranch. The house. Her family. "What can I do?" "Pray," Jonas said, "and stay out of the way." But Clara couldn't stay out of the way. Couldn't stand there doing nothing while everything they'd built burned to ash. She grabbed a bucket and joined the line, passing water from hand to hand, her arms screaming with the effort. The fire fought back. For every bucket they threw, the flames seemed to grow stronger, hungrier. Clara could feel the heat blistering her skin, could taste smoke in the back of her throat. Then she heard it, a sound that made her heart stop. Neighing. Terrified, desperate neighing. Molly. Molly was still in her stall, the stall that was attached to the burning barn. Clara dropped her bucket and ran. "Clara!" Jonas's voice followed her.
"Clara, no, stop!"
She didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Sammy loved that horse. That horse had given him his voice back. She couldn't let Molly burn. The heat intensified as she got closer, but Clara pushed through. She found the stable door and yanked it open, smoke billowing out in thick black clouds. She pulled her shawl over her face and plunged inside. "Molly! Molly, where are you?" A whinny answered her, high and panicked. Clara followed the sound, her eyes streaming, her lungs burning. She found Molly in the last stall, rearing and kicking at the walls, wild with terror. "Easy, girl, easy." Clara fumbled with the latch, her fingers clumsy from fear. "I'm gonna get you out. Just hold on." The latch gave. The door swung open. Molly bolted past Clara, nearly knocking her down, and thundered toward the exit. Clara tried to follow, but her legs gave out. The smoke was too thick. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see. She fell to her knees, gasping. "This is it," she thought. "This is how I die." Then strong arms grabbed her, lifted her, carried her out into the night air. She blinked up through streaming eyes and saw Zeke's face above her, his expression twisted with fear and fury. "Zeke?" Her voice came out as a croak. "You came back." "Rustlers were a diversion." Zeke's arms tightened around her. "Sent us on a wild goose chase so they could... He couldn't finish. He was staring at the burning barn, and Clara saw something in his eyes that terrified her more than the flames. Recognition. Memory. Trauma. "Zeke?" Clara grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Zeke, stay with me. Don't go back there. Stay here." "The fire." His voice had gone strange, distant. "Mary Ellen was... Emma was... I know, Zeke, but that was then. This is now." Clara's hands trembled against his cheeks. "I'm here. The children are safe. We're all safe. Look at me. Look at me." Zeke's eyes focused slowly, painfully. He looked at Clara like he was seeing her for the first time. "Clara?" "I'm here. I'm right here." "You went into the fire." "I had to save Molly. Sammy loves that horse." "You could have died." Zeke's voice cracked. "You could have died like... But I didn't." Clara managed a weak smile. "Takes more than a little fire to kill a Whitfield." Zeke made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. He pulled Clara close, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "Don't ever do that again," he said into her hair. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I won't. I promise." They held each other while the barn burned, while men shouted and water flew and the night sky glowed orange. And when the flames finally died down, when the barn was nothing but smoldering ruins, they were still holding on. Dawn revealed the full extent of the damage. The main barn was destroyed. The stable had survived, barely, thanks to Clara's quick action. 3 horses had been lost, trapped in stalls no one could reach. The hay stores were gone, and with them, half the feed for the winter. But no one had died. No people, anyway. And that was when they found the evidence. Jonas brought it to Zeke while Clara was serving breakfast to the exhausted firefighters. A kerosene can, half empty, found behind the barn, and a piece of paper, singed at the edges but still readable. A note. "This is just the beginning. Give up the children, or next time it'll be the house." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Burke. Has to be. Zeke's hands were shaking, not with fear, with rage. Couldn't get the children legal, so he's trying to burn us out. Can't we take this to the law? Burke is the law around here. Jonas spat on the ground. Ain't nobody gonna take our word over his. Then what do we do? Zeke was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold as winter. We end this. How? I'm going to town. Gonna pay Sheriff Burke a visit. Zeke reached for his gun belt. Man to man. Zeke, no. Clara grabbed his arm. That's exactly what he wants. You go in there guns blazing, he'll have every right to shoot you down. Then what happens to us? What happens to the children? So what do you suggest? We wait for him to burn down the house with all of you inside? We fight smart. Clara's mind was racing. Burke wants something. There's got to be a reason he's so set on getting those children. What is it? What's he after? Jonas cleared his throat. There's rumors. Nothing solid, but... What rumors? Burke's been running a scheme with the orphanages. Takes in kids as wards of the state. Then sells them off to mines and factories as cheap labor. Gets a cut of whatever the kids earn. Jonas's face twisted with disgust. It's illegal, but nobody can prove nothing. Clara felt sick. He wanted to sell my siblings? 4 healthy children? That's a lot of money. Jonas shook his head. You cost him a small fortune when you got away, Miss Clara. That's why he's so riled. Then we expose him. Clara's voice was fierce. We find proof. We show people what he really is. How? Zeke demanded. Burke's been running this scheme for years. If there was proof, someone would have found it by now. Maybe they weren't looking in the right places. Clara thought about Mrs. Ashworth, the woman from the orphanage, about the way she'd looked at the children, like they were livestock instead of human beings. The orphanage. Mrs. Ashworth. She's part of it. She has to be. If we can get someone inside, get them to talk. That's a dangerous game, Clara. Living is a dangerous game. Clara met Zeke's eyes. You taught me that. Zeke stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. All right, we do this your way. But I'm not sitting on my hands while you play detective. He turned to Jonas. Double the guards, day and night. Anyone approaches this ranch who ain't invited, you shoot first and ask questions later. Yes, boss. And Jonas? Zeke's voice hardened. If anything happens to these children while I'm dealing with Burke, I'll hold you personally responsible. Understood. Clara spent the next 2 days planning. She sent word to Widow Harrison, the woman who was her legal guardian on paper, asking for help. The widow had connections in Helena, friends who might know something about Mrs. Ashworth and her dealings. She talked to the ranch hands, asking about Burke, about rumors they'd heard, about anything that might be useful. One of them, a young man named Pete, remembered something. I had a cousin, Pete said, his voice low. She got sent to the Helena Orphan Asylum about 5 years back. Pretty little thing, sweet as sugar. Never saw her again. What happened to her? Nobody knows. Asylum says she got adopted by a good family.
But my aunt wrote to that family, and they said they never heard of her. Pete's jaw tightened. She just disappeared. Clara filed the information away. On the third day, Widow Harrison arrived at the ranch with news. Mrs. Ashworth keeps records, the widow said. She was a small woman, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with a spine of pure steel. Every child that comes through her asylum, she logs their name, where they came from, and where they went. Those records are locked in her office. Can we get to them? Not legally, but... The widow hesitated. I know someone. A woman who works at the asylum. She's been suspicious of Mrs. Ashworth for years. If we can convince her to help, do it. Clara didn't hesitate. Whatever it takes. It's risky, Clara. If we're caught, then we'll deal with it. Clara's voice was hard. Burke burned our barn. He threatened to burn our house. He wants to sell children into slavery. I ain't gonna sit here and let him win. The widow studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and fierce. Your mama would be proud of you. Clara's throat tightened. You knew my mama? I knew of her. Everyone did. Elizabeth Whitfield was a legend in these parts. Best cook in 3 counties, they said, and stubborn as a mule. The widow reached out and touched Clara's cheek. You're her daughter, through and through. That night, Clara lay awake long after the others had fallen asleep. Mama would be proud. The words echoed in her mind, filling her with warmth and pain in equal measure. She wondered what Mama would think of all this, of the ranch, of Zeke, of the danger they faced. She would tell me to fight, Clara thought. She would tell me to protect my family no matter what. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. A week later, everything fell into place. The woman from the asylum, a young nurse named Rebecca, agreed to help. She smuggled out copies of Mrs. Ashworth's records, pages and pages of names and dates and destinations. The evidence was damning. Over the past 10 years, more than 60 children had passed through the Helena Orphan Asylum. Of those 60, only 12 had been legitimately adopted. The rest had been transferred to mines in Montana, factories in the east, even farms down south that were little better than slave plantations. And every transfer bore Burke's signature. We got him, Clara breathed, staring at the papers spread across Zeke's desk. We actually got him. Not yet. Zeke's face was grim. Burke's got friends in high places. We take this to the local judge, he'll bury it. We need someone bigger. Someone Burke can't touch. The governor? Maybe. Zeke rubbed his chin. I know a man in Helena, federal marshal. Owes me a favor from way back. If I can get these papers to him, then let's do it. It ain't that simple. Zeke met her eyes. Burke's been watching the ranch. We try to leave. He'll know. He'll either stop us or do something worse. Clara felt cold fingers wrap around her heart. The children. He knows he can't beat us head on. But if he threatens the children while I'm gone... Zeke's hands clenched into fists. I won't leave them unprotected. Then I'll go. The words were out before Clara could stop them. Zeke's head snapped up. What? I'll take the papers to Helena. Burke's watching you, not me. He thinks I'm just a cook, a child. Clara's chin lifted. Let him keep thinking that. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous. Clara stepped closer, her voice fierce. You said it yourself. You can't leave the ranch. Jonas can't be spared. Who else is there? One of the hands? Burke knows all their faces. I'm the only one who can do this.
Clara. Zeke. She reached out and took his hand. You took us in when nobody else would. You gave us a home, a family, a future. Let me do this for you.
Let me fight.
Zeke stared at her, his gray eyes churning with emotion. Fear. Pride. Love. You're 12 years old, he said hoarsely. I stopped being 12 the day Mama died. Clara squeezed his hand. You know that. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Zeke pulled her into a fierce embrace. You come back, he said into her hair. You hear me? You do what needs to be done, and you come back. I will. Promise me. Clara pulled back and looked him in the eye. I promise. The plan was simple. Clara would leave at midnight, traveling light and fast on one of the ranch's fastest horses. She'd take the back trails, avoiding the main roads where Burke might have men watching. If all went well, she'd reach Helena by dawn, deliver the papers to the federal marshal, and be back at the ranch before anyone knew she was gone. If all went well. Clara spent the afternoon saying goodbye to her siblings, though she couldn't tell them why.
She braided Mercy's hair and told her to be good.
She held Lily close and breathed in the sweet scent of her baby sister's skin. She found Tommy practicing his roping and told him to look after the others while she was gone. Gone where? Tommy's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Just an errand. I'll be back before you know it. Clara, Tommy grabbed her arm. Whatever you're doing, take me with you. I can't. Why not? Because someone needs to stay here. Clara cupped her brother's face in her hands. If something goes wrong, if I don't come back, don't talk like that. If I don't come back, Clara continued firmly, you're the oldest. You protect them. You keep them together. Promise me. Tommy's eyes glistened. I promise. But Clara, you have to come back. You have to. I will. She found Sammy in the stable with Molly, brushing the horse's chestnut coat with careful, loving strokes. Hey, sweetheart. Sammy looked up.
His dark eyes studied her face, and Clara had the strange feeling he knew exactly what she was planning.
You're leaving, he said quietly. Clara's heart clenched. Just for a little while. The bad man wants to hurt us. Yes, but I won't let him. Sammy set down the brush and walked over to her. He reached up and touched her cheek, the same gesture she'd made to him 100 times. Be safe, he said. Come home. Clara pulled him close, breathing in the scent of hay and horse and little boy. I will, Sammy. I promise. Midnight came faster than she expected. Clara stood in the yard, dressed in Tommy's old clothes, her hair tucked under a cap. In the darkness, she could pass for a boy. Just another ranch hand, out on an errand. Zeke held her horse's reins, his face a mask of barely controlled fear. You remember the route? Yes. And the marshal's name? William Thornton, the Silver Star Inn. If anything looks wrong, if you see anyone suspicious, you turn around and come straight back. You understand? I understand. Zeke pulled her into one last embrace. I love you, he said roughly. You know that, don't you? You're my daughter now, same as the others, same as Emma ever was. Clara felt tears burning in her eyes. I love you too, Papa. It was the first time she'd called him that. Zeke made a choked sound and held her tighter. Then he let go, helped her into the saddle, and stepped back. Ride fast, he said. Ride safe, and come home. Clara gathered the reins and looked down at the man who had saved her family. I will, she said. I promise." Then she spurred her horse forward and disappeared into the night. The night swallowed Clara whole. She rode hard through the darkness, her heart pounding in rhythm with the horse's hooves. Every shadow seemed to hide danger. Every sound made her flinch. But she didn't slow down, couldn't slow down. The papers were tucked inside her shirt, pressed against her skin. 60 children. 60 lives stolen, sold, destroyed. And the proof of it all resting against her racing heart. She'd been riding for maybe 2 hours when she heard it. Hoofbeats. Behind her. Getting closer. Clara's blood turned to ice. She urged her horse faster, but the animal was already lathered with sweat, already straining at its limits. "Come on," she whispered, "just a little further, please." The hoofbeats grew louder. Clara risked a glance over her shoulder and saw torchlight flickering through the trees. 2 riders, maybe 3. They'd found her. Clara veered off the trail, plunging into the dense undergrowth. Branches clawed at her face, her arms, her clothes. She ducked low over the horse's neck and kept riding. "There! I see her!" The shout came from her left. Too close. They were too close. Clara's horse stumbled, caught itself, stumbled again. The poor animal was spent. She couldn't ask any more of it. She made a decision. Clara pulled the horse to a stop, slid from the saddle, and slapped its flank hard. "Go! Get out of here!" The horse bolted into the darkness. Clara didn't watch it go. She was already running, her feet pounding against the forest floor, the papers clutched against her chest. Behind her, she heard cursing. Horses crashing through brush. They'd seen the riderless horse. They knew she was on foot. Clara ran faster. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she kept running, kept pushing, kept fighting. She thought about her siblings, about Zeke, about the promise she'd made. "I will come home. I will." The ground suddenly disappeared beneath her feet. Clara tumbled down a steep embankment, rocks and roots tearing at her skin. She hit the bottom hard, the breath knocked out of her. For a moment, she just lay there, gasping, staring up at the stars spinning overhead. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up or die." She got up. Her ankle screamed in protest when she put weight on it. Twisted, maybe sprained. She gritted her teeth and kept moving, limping now, slower, but still alive. The voices above her had gone quiet. They'd lost her trail. But it wouldn't last. Come dawn, they'd find her tracks. They'd hunt her down. She had to reach Helena before sunrise. Clara walked through the night, her ankle throbbing, her body aching, her mind focused on one thing and one thing only: the mission, the papers, the children. She thought about the 60 names on those pages. 60 children who'd been ripped from their homes, sold like cattle, worked like slaves. Some of them were probably dead by now. Others might as well be. But if she could get these papers to the marshal, if she could expose what Burke had done, maybe she could save the ones who were still alive. Maybe she could make sure no other child ever suffered the same fate. It was enough. It had to be enough. Dawn found her at the edge of Helena, exhausted and limping, but alive. The town was just waking up. Shopkeepers opening their doors, delivery wagons rattling down the streets, early risers heading to work. Clara pulled her cap lower over her face and tried to blend in. The Silver Star Inn. That's what Zeke had said. Marshal William Thornton, the Silver Star Inn. She found it on the main street, a respectable-looking establishment with a painted sign swinging above the door. Clara hesitated outside, suddenly aware of how she must look. Dirty, torn clothes, a limp, a face smeared with blood and grime. She didn't care. Clara pushed through the door and walked straight to the front desk.
I need to see Marshal William Thornton. It's urgent." The clerk, a thin man with spectacles, looked her up and down with obvious distaste. "The marshal isn't receiving visitors." "He'll receive me." Clara pulled the papers from her shirt and slapped them on the desk.
"Tell him I have evidence of child trafficking. Tell him Sheriff Thaddeus Burke of Willow Springs has been selling orphans to mines and factories for the past 10 years. The clerk's eyes went wide. I beg your pardon?" "You heard me." Clara leaned forward, her voice hard as iron. "Now get the marshal, before I start screaming loud enough for the whole town to hear." 5 minutes later, Clara was sitting in a room on the second floor, facing a man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. Marshal William Thornton listened without interrupting as Clara told her story. She told him everything. About her mother's death, her father's abandonment, the sheriff's attempt to take her siblings, about Zeke and Stone Creek Ranch, about the fire, the threats, the conspiracy she'd uncovered. When she finished, the marshal picked up the papers and studied them in silence. "These are serious accusations," he said finally. "They're not accusations, they're facts." Clara met his gaze without flinching. 60 children, Marshal. 60 children sold into slavery, and Sheriff Burke signed every transfer.
"I know Thaddeus Burke. He's been sheriff of Willow Springs for 15 years.
And he's been a monster for just as long." Thornton set down the papers and leaned back in his chair. His eyes searched Clara's face, looking for something.
"You're Zeke McAllister's girl, the one he adopted."
"I'm Clara Whitfield, and Zeke didn't adopt me. He adopted my siblings."
"But he sent you here with these papers."
"He would have come himself, but Burke's watching the ranch. I was the only one who could slip through."
"And you rode all night, evaded Burke's men, and walked the last 5 miles on a sprained ankle."
The marshal's voice held a note of wonder.
"You're either the bravest girl I've ever met, or the most foolish."
"Maybe both," Clara's voice cracked. "I don't care what happens to me, Marshal. I just need you to stop Burke.
I need you to save those children."
Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "I've suspected Burke for years," he said quietly. "Never could prove anything. The man covers his tracks too well." He turned to face Clara. "But this is proof. Names, dates, signatures. This is enough to hang him." Clara's heart leaped. "You'll help?" "I'll do more than help." Thornton's eyes hardened. "I'll bring Burke to justice. Him and everyone else involved in this filthy business." He moved to the door and called out, "Deputy, get me 5 men. We're riding to Willow Springs." Clara tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The adrenaline that had kept her going was fading, and exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. "Easy there." Thornton caught her before she fell. "You've done your part, Miss Whitfield. Now let me do mine."
"I have to go back. My family."
"We'll still be there when this is over."
Thornton guided her to a chair.
"You need rest, food, medical attention for that ankle."
"I promised I'd come home."
"And you will. But right now, you're going to stay here, where it's safe." Thornton's voice softened. "You've been brave long enough, Clara. Let someone else carry the burden for a while." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but her body had other ideas. Her eyes were closing against her will, her muscles going slack.
"My siblings," she mumbled. "Protect them."
"I will. I swear it." It was the last thing Clara heard before the darkness took her. She woke to sunlight streaming through a window and the sound of birds singing outside. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was soft, softer than anything she'd slept on in years. The sheets smelled like lavender.
and someone had bandaged her ankle, cleaned her wounds, changed her into a clean nightgown. Then memory came flooding back. Clara sat up so fast her head spun. Burke, the marshal.
I have to. Easy, child, easy. A woman was sitting beside her bed, gray-haired, kind-faced, with gentle hands that pressed Clara back against the pillows.
Who are you?
Sarah Thornton, the marshal's wife. The woman smiled. You've been asleep for nearly 2 days.
2 days?
Clara's heart lurched.
My family, the ranch, I have to...
Your family is fine. Sarah's voice was soothing, firm. William sent word. Sheriff Burke has been arrested. The children at the orphanage have been freed, and your Mr. McAllister is on his way here to fetch you. Clara stared at her, not quite daring to believe. Burke's been arrested? Arrested, charged, and locked up in the federal prison in Helena, along with Mrs. Ashworth and 3 of his deputies. Sarah's smile widened. It seems your evidence was quite thorough. And the children? The ones who were sold? Sarah's smile faded slightly. They're working on that. It'll take time to track them all down.
But William's already sent telegrams to every territory in the West. They'll find them. Clara felt tears burning in her eyes. She hadn't cried when she fled from Burke. Hadn't cried when she rode through the night. Hadn't cried when she limped 5 miles on a sprained ankle. But now, finally safe, finally able to breathe, the tears came flooding out.
It's over, she sobbed. It's really over.
Sarah gathered her into a gentle embrace. It's over, child. You did it. You saved them all. Zeke arrived that evening. Clara heard his voice downstairs, deep and urgent, asking for her. She was out of bed before Sarah could stop her, hobbling down the stairs on her bandaged ankle. He was standing in the front hall, still covered in trail dust, his face haggard with worry. When he saw her, his expression crumpled. Clara. She threw herself into his arms. They held each other for a long time, neither speaking, just breathing each other in. Clara could feel Zeke's heart pounding against her cheek, could feel the trembling in his strong arms. I thought I've lost you, he said hoarsely. When you didn't come back, when Burke's men came to the ranch bragging about how they'd caught you. They didn't catch me. I know that now, but for 2 days I thought... His voice broke. I thought I'd lost another daughter. Clara pulled back and looked up at him. You didn't lose me. You'll never lose me. Zeke cupped her face in his rough hands. You did something incredible, Clara. You saved 60 children. You brought down a corrupt sheriff. You changed everything. I just delivered some papers. You did so much more than that. Zeke's eyes glistened. You showed me what courage looks like, what love looks like, what family looks like. He pressed his forehead against hers. I'm so proud of you. So damn proud. Clara smiled through her tears. Can we go home now? Yeah. Zeke's voice was rough with emotion. Let's go home. They rode back to Stone Creek Ranch the next morning, Clara sitting in front of Zeke on his big gray stallion. Marshal Thornton had offered an escort, but Zeke refused. Don't need protection anymore, he said. Burke's men have scattered like rats. There's nothing left to fear. The ride took most of the day. Clara dozed against Zeke's chest, exhausted but peaceful. When she woke, they were cresting the final ridge, and Stone Creek Ranch spread out below them. Home. Clara's heart swelled at the sight. The main barn was still a pile of rubble, but new lumber was stacked nearby, ready for rebuilding. Cattle grazed in the pastures. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house. And standing at the gate, lined up like soldiers waiting for inspection, were 4 small figures.
Clara!" Mercy's shriek carried across the valley. The children broke formation and came running, their legs churning up dust as they sprinted toward the approaching horse.
Zeke reined to a stop just as they arrived. Tommy reached them first, his face flushed with exertion and emotion. "You made it," he gasped. "Clara, you actually made it." "Told you I would." Zeke lowered Clara to the ground, and she was immediately engulfed by her siblings, Mercy sobbing into her shoulder, Tommy gripping her hand like he'd never let go, Sammy pressing his face against her stomach, and Lily climbing her like a tree, demanding to be held. "I missed you," Lily declared. "Z said you was coming back, but I didn't believe him." "Well, Z was right." Clara kissed her baby sister's forehead. "I'll always come back. I promised." They walked to the house together, all 6 of them. Jonas and the ranch hands were waiting on the porch, their weathered faces split into grins. "Welcome home, Miss Clara," Jonas said, tipping his hat. "Place ain't been the same without you." "Nobody can cook like Clara," one of the hands added. "We've been eating Jonas's slop for 3 days.
Nearly starved to death. "Hey now," Jonas protested. "My cooking ain't that bad." "It's pretty bad," Tommy said solemnly, and everyone laughed. That night, Clara cooked dinner for the first time in nearly a week. She made all her family's favorites: biscuits with honey for Zeke, fried chicken for Tommy, mashed potatoes for Mercy, applesauce for Sammy, and a special sugar cookie for Lily, shaped like a horse. They ate together at the big table in the main house, something they'd never done before. The children chattered and laughed, the ranch hands told stories, and Zeke sat at the head of the table, watching it all with a look of quiet wonder on his face. After dinner, when the dishes were washed and the children tucked into bed, Clara found Zeke on the front porch. He was staring out at the stars, a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. "Mind if I join you?" He shifted over, making room for her on the bench. "Couldn't sleep?" Too wound up. Clara settled beside him, pulling her shawl tight against the cool night air. "Keep thinking about everything that happened, everything that could have gone wrong." "But it didn't." "No, it didn't." Clara was quiet for a moment. "Zeke, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When you first saw us at your gate, 5 dirty children begging for work, why did you let us stay? You could have turned us away. Most folks would have." Zeke was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "When Sammy touched my hand that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in 7 years. Connection. Like maybe I wasn't as dead inside as I thought." He turned to look at her. "And when I looked at you, Clara, standing there with your chin up and your shoulders back, ready to fight the whole world for your family, I saw myself. I saw who I used to be before the fire took everything." "You saved us." "No," Zeke shook his head. "You saved me. You and those children. You gave me a reason to live again." He reached out and took her hand. "I spent 7 years thinking my family was gone forever, that I'd never have anyone to love or protect again. But I was wrong. Family ain't about blood. It's about choice. And I choose you, Clara. All of you." Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I wish Mama could have met you. She would have liked you." "I wish I could have met her too." Zeke squeezed her hand. "But I think, in a way, I know her. Through you. Through your cooking, your stubbornness, your fierce love for those children. Elizabeth Whitfield raised an extraordinary daughter, and I'm honored to call that daughter mine." Clara leaned against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him, the solid strength. "I called you Papa," she said softly, "before I left for Helena. I don't know if you remember." "I remember." "Did you mind?"
Zeke's arm came around her, pulling her close. It was the best thing anyone's ever called me.
They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Clara thought about all the miles she'd traveled, all the fears she'd faced, all the promises she'd made and kept. She thought about Mama and the promise to keep the family together. She thought about the 60 children whose lives would be changed because of the papers she'd delivered. She thought about her siblings, sleeping peacefully in their beds, safe and loved and home. And she thought about Zeke, this broken man who had opened his heart when he had every reason to keep it closed. "Clara?" "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" Zeke's voice was thick with emotion. "For showing up at my gate that day. For being too stubborn to take no for an answer. For cooking your way into my heart and refusing to leave." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you for giving me a family again." Clara smiled into the darkness. "Thank you for letting us stay." A year later, Stone Creek Ranch was unrecognizable. The new barn stood tall and proud, bigger than the old one. The herd had doubled in size, and the ranch house, once cold and empty, was filled with noise and laughter and life. Tommy, now 11, had become Zeke's right hand. He rode with the men, worked the cattle, and was already talking about taking over the ranch someday. Jonas said he'd never seen a boy take to ranching so fast. Mercy, 9 years old and bursting with energy, had started a small choir among the ranch hands' children. They performed every Sunday after church, their sweet voices filling the valley with song. Sammy, 6 now, talked constantly. He still loved Molly best of all, and Zeke had given him the horse officially, papers and everything. The boy spent every spare moment in the stable, brushing and feeding and caring for his beloved mare. And Lily, 4 years old and growing like a weed, had Zeke wrapped around her little finger. She called him Papa now, like all the others, and he spoiled her shamelessly. As for Clara, she was still cooking, still running the kitchen with an iron hand and a generous heart. But she was also learning to read properly, thanks to the tutors Zeke had hired. And she was teaching Mercy and Tommy to cook, passing on Mama's recipes the way Mama had passed them to her. One evening in late summer, the whole family gathered for dinner. Clara had made a special meal to celebrate the anniversary of their arrival at Stone Creek. Roast beef with all the trimmings, fresh bread with honey, and the 3-layer chocolate cake that had taken her all afternoon. When everyone was seated, Zeke stood and raised his glass. "A year ago today, a brave young woman showed up at my gate with 4 hungry children and a copper pot. She asked me for a chance, just one chance to prove herself." He looked around the table at the faces of his family. "I thought I was doing her a favor by letting her stay. But I was wrong. She was doing me a favor. She was saving my life." His eyes found Clara's. "To Clara, the best cook in 3 counties, the bravest person I've ever known, and the daughter I never expected but always needed." "To Clara," the others echoed, raising their glasses. Clara felt her cheeks flush. "You're embarrassing me." "Get used to it," Zeke grinned. "I plan to embarrass you for the rest of your life." "That's a long time." "It better be." After dinner, Clara slipped away to the kitchen to start the dishes. She was elbow-deep in soapy water when she felt a small hand tug at her apron. "Clara?" She looked down. Sammy stood there, his dark eyes serious. "What is it, sweetheart?" "I remember something. From before." Clara dried her hands and knelt down to his level. "What do you remember?" "Mama. I remember Mama." Sammy's voice was quiet but steady. "She had brown hair like you, and she smelled like bread, and she used to sing us to sleep." Clara's throat tightened. "That's right, she did." I couldn't remember for a long time. It was like there was a wall in my head. But now I can see her again. Sammy reached out and touched Clara's cheek. "You look like her."
when you cook, when you take care of us. You look just like her." Clara pulled him into a fierce hug, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Sammy. Thank you for remembering." "Clara?" "Yeah? I'm glad we came here. I'm glad we found Papa." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Later that night, after the children were in bed and the ranch was quiet, Clara stood on the porch and looked out at the stars. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the hunger and fear, the running and hiding, the desperate gamble that had led them to Zeke's gate. She thought about all the time she'd wanted to give up, all the time she'd been certain they wouldn't survive. But they had survived. More than survived. They had thrived.
Clara pulled Mama's copper pot from its hook beside the door. She'd cleaned it 1,000 times since that terrible night in Willow Springs, but she could still see the dent where it had struck Deputy Horace's skull. Could still feel the weight of it in her hands, the righteous fury that had driven her to swing. She wasn't proud of hurting someone, but she wasn't sorry either. She'd done what needed to be done to protect her family, and she would do it again in a heartbeat. "Can't sleep?" Zeke appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "Just thinking." "About what?" Clara took the coffee he offered and sipped it slowly. "About how different things are now. About how scared I was when we first came here." "You didn't seem scared." "I was terrified. Every minute of every day." Clara smiled into her cup. "But I couldn't show it. The little ones were counting on me." Zeke leaned against the porch rail, his eyes on the stars. "You know what I remember most about that first day? When you told me you could cook. You said it like it was the only thing you had to offer, like it was nothing special." "It was all I had." "No," Zeke shook his head. "You had so much more. Courage, determination, love so fierce it could move mountains. The cooking was just how you showed it." He turned to look at her. "You didn't just feed my men, Clara. You fed my soul." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "Zeke, I know I ain't good with words, never have been, but I need you to know something." He set down his coffee and took both her hands in his. "The day you walked through my gate was the day my life started over. You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve, a family I never thought I'd have again, a reason to keep going. You gave us the same thing. Then I guess we saved each other." Zeke's rough thumbs rubbed circles on the backs of her hands. "And I don't know what the future holds, Clara. Don't know what challenges we'll face or what storms we'll weather. But I know one thing for certain." "What's that?" Zeke smiled, and for the first time since she'd known him, the shadows in his eyes were completely gone. "We'll face them together, as a family, always." Clara stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding tight to this man who had given them everything. "Always," she agreed. Above them, the stars blazed bright against the endless Montana sky, and in the house behind them, 4 children slept peacefully, dreaming of horses and songs and chocolate cake. Clara Whitfield had walked through fire to keep her family together. She had fought sheriffs and outlaws, braved wilderness and danger, risked everything she had for the people she loved. And now, finally, she was home. Not just a place with walls and a roof, not just a ranch with cattle and horses. Home was Zeke's gruff voice reading bedtime stories. Home was Tommy's proud grin when he roped his first calf. Home was Mercy's songs floating through the evening air. Home was Sammy's laughter, so long silent, now ringing out across the valley. Home was Lily's sticky fingers reaching for another cookie. Home was love. Home was family. Home was forever. And Clara Whitfield,
The homeless girl, with nothing but a copper pot and a promise, had found it at last.
Mayo. Grace, that sounds amazing. Together, I'm not so sure, but I bet that's great. Feed and back hate me, but they can chill. Okay, well, hopefully they simmer down on the hating you. Hopefully soon it's not as big of a deal. So I have a feeling we could be done with this top sooner than later. Potentially, I'm going to say potentially in a week's time. I don't know if that's possible, but we'll see. But it's crazy to think that in a week's time, is it in a week? It's gonna be here soon, sooner than later. Let me see, how much time do I have? Actually, I have like 10 days ish until my vacation. So I'm hoping that I can have like maybe like one live stream from Toronto. We'll see. Maybe one, if possible. If possible. But we shall see.